Hi folks, my name is Paddy Hogg. I'm a councillor in North Lanarkshire and I'm doing an open appeal to the Scottish Government about the radiation and the adverse health effects from this in our constant use of things like mobile phones, Wi-Fi in the home, Wi-Fi at work, laptops if you're using them on your knee and the link up to Wi-Fi, and the radiation coming from cordless phones and also that coming from masts, the large antenna beaming information back and forward to houses from 3G and 4G. I will go on to mention the potential consequences from the rollout of 5G later, but for now, what we know from the best scientists in the world in this field, that's the scientists in EMF radiation, electromagnetic field radiation, is that at very low levels there is damage to human beings and to all forms of life. There is a huge amount of peer-reviewed science. 10,000 papers have been written that prove this, and yet the telecoms industry and the Westminster government have brushed all of this aside to roll out all the new gadgets, your iPhone 7, 8, 9, 10 and all of the new technology, and have sold it as if there is nothing to be concerned about. The science is telling us the very opposite. There is a lot to be concerned about. What we know from the science is, first and foremost, all forms of radio frequency radiation coming from these devices is a class 1 carcinogen, not class 2 as it was designated in 2011 by the WHO, the World Health Organization. The recent evidence from Professor Hardell in Sweden, who did a massive study, is that low-level ionizing radiation causes 2 different types of cancer. His research was repeated, but in a different manner, by the Ramazzini Institute study in Italy, and that used the large antenna at distance, and they proved through the research with animals that there was 2 similar carcinogens, 2 similar tumours caused by the tests they did. Immediately following that, there was a very large-scale American study done, $25 million, the National Toxicology Program study in America, and that duplicated the same outcomes. 2 different types of cancer tumours caused by EMF radiation at the same levels that we use mobile phones, Wi-Fi routers, etc. So what we're being told from PHE, Public Health England, and from IRTNIP is actually nonsense, to quote Professor Henshaw of Bristol University, one of the leading experts in this area. And what I would like to say is that the majority of the leading experts in this area produced what's called the EMF call, the electromagnetic field call, and they published it on the internet. 250 of them signed this appeal to the WHO and to the United Nations for far lower and safer regulations. And in that call, the world's leading experts in the area said IRTNIP serve industry, not public health. That should be underlined. These 2 regulators should have been pushed aside long ago, because what the science is telling us now is that we have a society that is being damaged considerably in many different ways by electromagnetic radiation. We know from the science that if you set a laptop on your knee that is Wi-Fi based and the router is sending the signals back and forward, you're getting radiation going into your stomach area, you're irradiating your pancreas, you're irradiating your liver, you're irradiating your private parts and affecting fertility. And this is serious when it comes to like young males and females as well, where it's causing infertility. And you're also affecting the blood in your body. So if you place your mobile phone in your jacket pocket, close to your heart, there is a process of cell stickiness where the blood is actually stacking together, the rouleau effect, and that means there's a potential for cardiovascular issues. So if you've got pre-existing heart conditions, you are playing with fire by putting your phone in your jacket unless it's switched off or is on flight mode. So I believe the Scottish Government should be doing a public campaign to advise people how to use the technology carefully and wisely and safely. We need to lower as much as we can our exposure to EMF radiation, because that is not happening, because we all tend to believe wrongly that it's safe just to use this stuff 24/7. The biggest, most ubiquitous environmental toxin in the modern European world is EMF radiation. You get up in the morning, if you've had Wi-Fi running all night, you're being irradiated at night because it goes through walls. You're being irradiated during the day at your work. If there's Wi-Fi at your work, you get it on buses, you get it in cafes. It's seen as the trendiest things in sliced bread, and yet the science, which is being ignored, tells us very clearly it's a neurotoxin, that it's creating problems with people's brains. We know that there are at least 8 mechanisms of harm, and they are described clearly by Professor Martin Paul, and I'll list them. Lowered fertility, first and foremost. Neurological effects, second. Third, cellular DNA damage, and that's to 1 and 2 strand. We all have new cells growing continuously every day, and if they do not develop properly, it can lead to things like cancer. And then the cellular apoptosis, that means death of cells. That can be increased, that happens naturally, but this is speeded up. We're effectively aging the insides of our body through being exposed to EMF radiation. The 5th one is oxidative stress and free radical damage. The 6th is endocrine disruptive effects. The 7th is intracellular calcium gate ionizing effects. What that means is that when the cells are put under severe stress, given that we are ourselves electrical beings and cells tend to use electropulses to signal between each other, they find themselves threatened when they are hit by pulsations of radiation, the ions coming through the air at very rapid rates at 2.45 gigahertz, short waves pulsing from Wi-Fi. It's damaging the cells so much they force excess calcium into the cells, which stiffens them up and stops them functioning healthy. So what this contributes to, if it's a fetus in a pregnant woman's womb, what's happening is that it enhances dramatically the chances of that child being born autistic. And at the opposite end of the age scale, as we get much older, the Wi-Fi radiation, through the same effect, the calcium gate effect, by pushing too much calcium into the cells, is contributing hugely to the rapid increase in Alzheimer's disease. This is a direct cause of, these are the effects, these are the mechanisms of harm by which we're being affected. If we look at a huge amount of the peer-reviewed science, 10,000 peer-reviewed papers showing harm, there is a large encyclopedic volume of these called the Bioinitiative Report. And in the 2019 updated research summaries, there's a graph showing the industry-sponsored research compared to the non-industry studies. Harmful effects, 32% of the papers published. No effect or negligible is 68%. Now, even 32% harmful effects should be registered, and we should be concerned about that. But then we look at the EMF independent scientists, those that are not bought by industry. We find in the non-industry studies, harmful effects is 70%, 30% for inconclusive or no effects. So the majority there show that there are harmful effects. The truth of the matter is, from all of the peer-reviewed studies done and the independent large research studies done, as previously mentioned, on cancer, that the debate is over. We can push aside the paid-for industry studies. The debate is over. Radio frequency radiation causes cancers. it causes neurological effects, it causes diseases, it increases diabetes through the effect in the pancreas, through radiation. We are all suffering from some level of radiation sickness in modern society. Some of us might not show symptoms, but there are up to 7, 8, maybe 9% of the population suffers from hypersensitivity to electromagnetic radiation. Sweden at least considers this a disease and helps treat people to get rid of the disease. It means quite often making sure that they're away from the effects of Wi-Fi. Ethernet cables in your house, shut the router down and put it onto cables. Disable the Wi-Fi transmission ability and simply send the data through the cables. People with electrosensitivity have to make sure they minimise their use of phones. So at the moment, most of the kids buying this equipment are using phones without one piece of knowledge that they're doing themselves harm. We know for a fact through the study of science that children, especially under the age of 10, are 10 times more, will absorb 10 times more radiation into their heads. They have got thinner bones, thinner skulls, and it goes right into the brain and causes more damage. That generation from kids coming through very young, getting these devices, are more likely now, by the time they get to the late teens and early 20s, to get a glioblastoma brain tumour. You don't usually last more than a year with that. If you're lucky, you'll survive. So there needs to be something done urgently to protect pregnant women and to protect children. And one of the things we can do is look at the science, pass the information around, make sure your friends and family know, reduce the harm, reduce the exposure. We need education coming from the Scottish Government, and we also need a new health framework to train doctors how to deal with people who have got the symptoms. There will probably be hundreds, if not thousands of people dying of cancers, gliomas and various diseases where the main contributory factor to their illness is an unknown, unseen and even unheard unless you use an acoustimeter or some meter to read the radiation. No one sees it, so we tend to think it doesn't exist. The science is telling us it is debilitating people now, and that is before we even consider the so-called Internet of Things and we roll out 5G. 5G is far more dangerous than 3 or 4G for the following reason. We know that the mechanism of harm is the pulsation based on the shortness of waves. So if a 4G antenna is pulsing towards your house and you've got Wi-Fi in your house, guess what? The small box of Wi-Fi is far more dangerous to your health than the large antenna. The large antenna might emit 6 volts per meter. We know that at way below 1 watt per meter, harm begins to human beings. If that's pulsed at you constantly, you will be harmed by it, whether you think you are or not. There will be damage done to your cells and there can be a cascade from oxidative stress. But the antenna tends to pulse large waves about 16 inches long, so the shorter the wave with the pulsation, the more damage done. Wi-Fi carries a wave of 5 inches long, so it's doing double the damage or more. So the Wi-Fi in your house, if you know how to do it, should be switched off, disabled, and we should be using Ethernet cables. When it comes to 5G, the one thing to remember is shorter the wavelength and the faster the pulsation, the more damage is done. So we're going to go from Wi-Fi at 5 inches to millimeter waves at hundreds of times the speed. So we know that Wi-Fi is damaging health now, and you can literally multiply by the speed. Millimeter waves from Wi-Fi from 5G is going to cause devastation to people's health. The whole notion that we're going to roll out 5G and it's going to boost the economy is a fantasy pipe dream. The telecoms industry want to roll this out so they can grab data from us, and they know all about every purchase, where we're going, what we're doing, etc. It's big data capture. That's what it's about. And it's about making money from consumers. We're the consumers, and they're going to be taking the information. 5G could be rolled out without the transmission of radio waves, electromagnetic radio waves through the air. They could be using optical fibre. No need for transmission of EMFs at all. It shouldn't be rolled out. No satellite should be going into space. And if anyone looks closely at the science and understands it, they will stand next to the scientists who have become political in this because no one's been listening to them. And I'm making a direct appeal to the Scottish Government to look again, think again, and look again at the science. Set up a committee to review this, set up our own regulator, and start giving advice to the Scottish people of how to protect our health before things get any worse. Thank you.